At all times, tracks, trailways and highways served humanity as keys to evolution. Empires and civilizations have disappeared, centuries-old dust swept capitals and cities. But roads kept bringing new people here. Do we understand how roads revitalized the place hundreds of years ago, and how do they change people's destinies today? We go on the expedition The Treasures of the Nation to find and reveal facts about life at crossroads of antiquity. Motorways are just the top of centuries, but if the trail is left, it will surely be found even thousands of years later. In today's episode, where was the legendary land of cities situated? What secret technology the Archaean civilization possessed and from whom it carefully hid it? Who built the first chariot? Bronze statues, bronze medals, bronze era. All these concepts would not have existed in our lives if in the distant past, when people knew only stone and bone, a new material, plastic, hard and comfortable, would not break into a person's life. Bronze. This time the route of our expedition lies to Petropavlovsk, a city in the north of Kazakhstan. It was in this region where traces of the unique civilization of that era were discovered. It stretches on a vast territory. A chain of fortified cities with defensive walls was under its authority. What was hidden behind them? This is what we have to find out. Anatoly Andreyevich? Hello, I'm Arman. Can we talk? Yes, as always. Anatoly Pleshakov is one of those archaeologists who managed to discover and explore the first fortified settlements of the Bronze Age of that powerful and mysterious civilization. Because he is the only person in Kazakhstan who knows the archaeological traceology. Anatoly Andreyevich, here we go, visiting museums, seeing various archaeological finds, and somewhere it is signed that it is a tip, a scraper, a knife, and so on. But how do you and how does the science determine the functional purpose of certain objects? Well, there are different methods. Typology is one of them. Now, this one looks like a tip of a spear, so it is a tip. This one is called a knife-shaped plate, let's say, and this one also. But there is also a science called traceology. It is directed towards learning upon the traces of a teamwork on this or that tool, what was actually done with labor equipment. Different types of material processing tools, for example plane works, cutting or sawing the same woods, left different traces, serifs on it. Thus it is possible to determine what kind of works upon what material was carried out by it in antiquity. Moreover, it is possible to find out what kind of economy prevailed in the culture studied. Well, thank you so much. You've put us to the lower level of microarchaeology. And how can we now rise up to the level of macroarchaeology, say, to the field to see anything of epochs interesting for us? Well, in this case, we have an opportunity to go to Dalmatova right now, where the labor equipment of different ages, the stone and the bronze ages, are being produced, to see how it all was done. Let's go. With pleasure. There, Anatoly Andreyevich, please tell us where we are and what is this place? In general, I would say that this is the most northern corner of our country. Here, right behind the forest, there is a border with a two-man region, and here there is the most northern ancient settlement of the early Iron Age. It is the Saka settlement of the 5th to 1st centuries BC. The thing is that we've decided to create an open-air museum here. We want to reconstruct the whole history of Kazakhstan in one place, for it to become a scientific polygon for school children, for campers, so that we can show how people lived in the Stone Age, in the Bronze Age, in the early Iron Age, in the Middle Ages, till almost modern days. Anatoly Andreyevich is the North Kazakhstan region more well known for the artifacts of the Bronze Age. Even beginning with the earliest Bronze Age, which is the Petrine culture, that has entered the science upon the name of an artifact found here in the North Kazakhstan region, 100 kilometers south to the city of Petropavlovsk. We started to dig it out in 1968, and it was my first excavation of it. This is how the Petrine culture, anew for the science of those times, was proposed. What is it famous for? The thing is that the Petrine culture is the very beginning of the Bronze Age, the first bronze castings. The world's first? Maybe. This is the most ancient culture that knew the bronze, and since they knew it, they were keeping this secret. And we can see that other settlements of the Bronze Age, let's say, look like just simple villages, while the Petrine culture has already the defensive constructions, which is very interesting. Following the Petrine culture of bronze casters in 1987, the widely known Archaeum was discovered. In fact, Petrovka in Kazakhstan and Archaeum on the territory of Russia is one culture, one era, one people. Just Archaeum is a more grandiose construction and a brighter phenomenon created by ancient people who knew the secret of bronze casting. And what territory did this culture cover? In principle, according to the artifacts found, we can say that this Petrine or Sintashtinskaya culture, all those Archaeums and so on, took the territory from the Ural to the Irtysh. We can see everything we are talking about in Archaeum. Let's go then. Let's go. After overcoming hundreds of kilometers and the state border of the Russian Federation, the expedition, the treasures of the nation, arrived in Archaeum. We are at the Museum of Archaeum. Here a research fellow of the museum, archaeologist Fyodor Nikolaevich Petrov, should meet us. Let's go find him. Good day, Fyodor Nikolaevich. Hello, welcome, my pleasure. We are exploring the ancient roads which were laid by the bronze casters in these steppes. Can you tell us about Archaeum? If about Archaeum, then let's first go there, at the settlement, and afterwards we'll return to the museum to see some more materials and talk a little bit. Okay? With great pleasure. Okay, let's do it. Fyodor Nikolaevich, we've been told that the Archaeum people came here from the southern territories of modern Kazakhstan. Is this true? In general, it is a very arguable question for science, you know. The origin of this very culture is probably the most discussed issue in science. But the fact that tribes which inhabited the territory of modern Kazakhstan influenced the formation of this culture is true. So this is the structure of the living complex. Yes, right. Here to say it is a fragment of the living complex. You can see the reconstructed bases of two dwellings. So the lower part has been reconstructed, and here are the walls, which were separating two living rooms and uniting them at the same time. The ancient dwelling itself has an area of up to 200 square meters. 2 rows of pillars or columns situated in the center of each room. It was this archaic house model that was later realized in the format of detached houses throughout the Bronze Age. There was a well in every ancient living room. Why did they need so many wells? There is a version that there were some ritual moments that the population of every house should have drunk their personal water. More likely that wells were necessary for watering during the winter period, which can be also connected to the cattle watering, since in winter the rivers freeze over. But someone said that these wells were used for copper smelting. It is true. As a rule, ovens are situated next to wells. Here we can see the reconstructed domical oven with the dome in the upper part of the well. Archaic people actively participated in the development of technologies of the vast Eurasian metallurgical province. Relying on the copper ore deposits that bordered the Ural Ridge, they made a great contribution to the subtleties of the smelting of bronze and copper, thus playing a significant role in the development of the steppe civilization. Here is Archaim, a truly exciting architectural monument of the times when a man was just learning to do something with hands. Amazing! How long has this culture existed? Is it possible to determine it scientifically? The very culture of the Archaim type, so to say the culture of the earliest layer of the Archaim type, it is possible even to call it the Syntashtinskaya archaeological culture, has existed for about 200 to 250 years, from the middle of the 20th to the middle of the 19th century AD. Yes. The 19th to 17th centuries are its further development, maybe of some other origin, but continuing its traditions. It means it didn't break and the Archaim people didn't leave it. Well, the part could have gone somewhere. There are versions of some specialists that they went further to India and Iran. There are versions of their advancement to the West. Some specialists talk about the same Gypsoses in Egypt. The others connect them to Mycenaeans. But here we see the stone forms carved for casting bronze tools. Exactly the same we saw in the Petropavlovsk Museum of Local Law. What is interesting, when they came here to Archaim from the territory of modern Kazakhstan, the ancient bronze casters even more improved their ancient recipes. Terrific! We are now moving along the bronze roads, so to say. Yes, along the roads of the ancient bronze casters. But what influenced more, the Archaim people on the roads or the roads on the Archaim people? For the Archaim era, of course, creation of those settlements of the Archaim type themselves has become such a creation of the great center, which further, supposedly, was forming the roads around it. Because we see that people were spreading along more wide territory than just these fortified settlements. From Archaim, the expedition follows to Chelyabinsk, a city where a whole galaxy of archaeologists, specialists in the Bronze Age works, the city which is still one of the largest metallurgical centers in Russia. A wonderful city of Chelyabinsk, a wonderful sunny day. Following the good old tradition, we decided to visit Chelyabinsk Regional Museum of Local Law, where an archaeologist, Dmitry Gennadyevich Zdanovich, will meet us. Welcome. Hi. Hello, coming in. Yeah? Yes. Dmitry Gennadievich, we've been to Archaim and we were told what a massive culture of the Bronze Age it was. Could you tell us more about it, especially in terms of roads and communications and how they were developed? Yes, truly, with the appearance of the so-called state of cities or land of cities at the South Urals in the developed Bronze Age, we can say that there were not only directions in the steppe, but the roads. Up to now we can see parts of roads on aero photo shootings. You still can? In the region? Yes, it is true. Curious to relate. Well, the major connections are, of course, fortifications themselves. The roads were mainly created between them, but the other thing that provided for constancy of roads were the raw materials. Sometimes you have to mine it, so it is necessary to transport and process it. Yes, right. To sell once again? Surely, yes. For the land of cities, it is, first of all, the sources of copper. These sources were of two types. Small ones, which ran out quite quickly, and a number of large ones, from which the dressed ore was transported for tens of kilometers. Tens of kilometers! Tens of kilometers! What is also interesting that at the places of many ancient mines, modern industrial developments appeared. And what about the outer communications and roads, which connected the archaic world of the Bronze Age to the other world, north, south and west? Well, China becomes closer to us just in the era of the final bronze, so to say. In the epoch of the Middle Bronze, in many relations, Western regions approximately till Greece were closer to us. But can it be proved? Are there any artifacts of the Archaean culture in Greece, or the Greek ones here in Archaean? You know, there are, certainly there are. Here is a bright example, the so-called psalias, the parts of horse harness made of the elk horns. Experts believe that the psalium invented for effective horse riding most likely first appeared in the southern Urals and northern Kazakhstan. Similar psalias were found in one of the burials of the famous Mycenaean burial ground with the burials of the kings. Archaean psalias are symbolic things. They cannot be confused with anything else. They were situated in this burial, can you imagine? Surrounded by golden masks and other precious utensils, crystal vessels and amazing weapons. And simple steppe psalias among everything, yes. It is also very interesting that there are quite a lot of common traits in culture. For example, for the land of cities, dual burials of horses were typical. The same burials we can find nowhere else but in the Mycenaean Greece. So is it possible to say that if Archaean psalias were found in the king burial in Greece, then our steppe guys could have been the kings of Hellas? You know, there is such a point of view. Of course, it is a little bit fantastic, but some authors believe that the latest glance of Mycenaean civilization, when the Greek turned to the Mycenaeans, so to say the steppe guys, as you call them, were necessary. After the meeting with Dmitry Zdanovich, participants of our expedition had a unique opportunity to see how blacksmithing created by Archaean people looks in practice in modern days. Anastas, would you be so kind to tell us, is this how the ancient smithery looked like? Has anything changed? Only bellows have changed to the fan for 300 years. Bellows were used for rare feeding back then. Bellows were used for rare feeding, but now everything is done by means of electricity. Well, smithcraft is highly developed here in Chelyabinsk. Yes, highly developed. Smiths, yes. Here, let's say, in a radius of 35 kilometers, I know about 5 smiths. Maybe you'll tell us how the whole process goes. What are you doing right now? The process looks like this. The metal is being heated and then smithed on anvil. It hits in hearth, yes. In those times there was no electricity or anything, so the only method of metal processing was heating. Now we have turning machines and milling automatics, but we still can't repeat the process of those times, when people did everything by sight, though qualitatively. Do you mean that the ancient blacksmiths were better than the modern ones? Yes, they were. And how are the blacksmiths being treated today in Chelyabinsk region? Are they respected or what? How do people react when you say that you are a blacksmith? It depends. In our times, it doesn't matter what you're called, but what you can do. That's what I think. Buy your fruits. Right. Now let's see the fruits of your work. Let's see. Ivan, we were told that you with your own hands are doing something that the Archaim people or Sintashti people used to produce. Is this true? Yes, it is true. Here at our Archaeo Center for Experimental Archaeology, we reconstruct ancient technologies. We have employees, including myself, who do the bronze casting. Please tell us how everything is done. I see the forms which we previously met in museums. Yes, this is a real casting form. A stone, a stone. This is talc. It was often used for forms production on our territory. It is very simple in processing. It can be processed even with a chalcedony stone. This is a sharp swipe, and here you may see how well it is being cut. Forms for bronze casting could be made not only from stone but also from clay, earth and even wood. There is also a casting technology according to the last model using wax. Is it a long-lasting, time-consuming procedure? Yes, it's quite long. It is especially hard to do it upon the last model, which was used mainly to produce rare and precious things. More often, these multi-use composite forms were used. They could be of 2 or 4 parts and were used mainly to mold arrowheads like these. Are these defective or they are to be processed further? Mainly, these are defective. These are deadheads which are being cut off. I mean, here it is clearly seen how an arrowhead is being lined. Deadheads are being removed, an arrowhead is being polished and sharpened. This could be bronze or pure copper, as it is here. These might be the arrowheads. Yes, that's true. Here we have some rather different spears. Bushing of this spear is formed by the method of forging. That is, the workpiece is being casted with a finished pan, but with an open bushing. Then, with the help of heating, hacking and forging, this bushing is formed. This very spear is made by the method of casting of straight bronze. This is an axe, and this is a battle axe. Yes, really, it is the most typical battle axe of Sintashti culture. We've tested it numerous times, hewing trees, bones, pork carcass, and even stone. Morphology of the Sintashti axe is dash battle. This axe clearly had a high penetrating power. Scientists do not know it for certain whether the Sintashti people had opponents with heavy armor. However, some experiments were still conducted. One friend of mine who is engaged in historical reconstruction of the early Middle Ages once asked me just for fun to hit one of his helmets with an axe, and came home by willow cross. Not with this very axe, yes, with a copy of this axe. An axe buckled a little bit, I mean its blade has buckled, but it did made a hole. It even strokes processed steel, which once again is the evidence of properties of bronze. Actually, it has a battle shape. I would even compare it to modern fighter. How resilient was this shape? For how long did this axe live? Maybe in some other cultures. I can say that in Sintashta this very type of axe with such tight pains is one of the earliest, and this shape historically had long been in existence. The later population of the Great Steppe, the Saka nomads, Scythians and Sarmatians used similar battle axes. Sintashta axe is a typological great-grandfather of spike hammers, which were used until the 18th century, that is, for almost 4,000 years. How did the technologies that the Archaean civilization has mastered pass not only in time, but also in space? To get the answer to this question, our team turned to the authoritative archaeologist Andrey Epimakov. Andrey Vladimirovich, I study the topic of roads. Now, in connection to the Archaean culture, I'm trying to understand whether it was this culture which massively developed and created a network of roads, or communications have been already developed enough to create Archaean. What is your opinion as a specialist? Archaean, as the other settlements alike and its people, appeared as a result of functioning of roads, and itself created a brand new system of roads, a brand new reality. When we see connections between the South Siberia and the Urals, between the Urals and Central Europe, we understand that their basis was laid approximately 4,000 years ago. And the creators of the cultures of Archaean and Sintashti were one of the central chains of all that. But what terminology should be used to identify whether there was the influence of their activity in the global scale? I am the follower of a very popular theory among Russian scientists which states about the early globalization. Globalization? Yes, globalization. I suppose that the Bronze Age is the very first epoch of globalization, when the whole world turned to be interconnected. Well, at least the major parts of the whole world, if talking about Eurasia. So it means that these guys, charioteers, were the ones who created the global world, when global ideas, things and people began to spread. Firstly, this is the Western Asia. Chariots in Egypt were created later, and in China even later, but the invention of this whole complex should have been based on a long experience of using horse, and only steppe people possessed it. So it is good when globalization processes and migration on a massive scale goes, because this promotes civilization development. Not always we see and understand the scale of these processes, but they were taking place all the time, and modern situation is no better and no worse in this relation. Migration is normal. Thank you very much. In this case, for further development of mankind, you should come to us, to Almaty and Astana, as we did when we came here. With great pleasure. I accept your invitation. The ancient steppe people, the creators of Archaean and Sintashti, influenced greatly on the modern world. The ancient bronze casters not only diligently cut out forms and carefully casted the silhouettes of the still operating continental roads, and they not only rushed them on their super high-speed chariots for that time. Our ancestors actually forged the foundations of the entire modern globalized world. And all we have to do is to remember this. Be grateful for this, and we also need to know that only in the movement around the world, in communication with different peoples, development takes place. We are opening some new roads and traveling the old ones.